Not every Game of the Year nominee takes home the trophy at the Game Awards, but that doesn't mean they weren't worthy. In fact, many of them still earned Game of the Year honors from other outlets and fans alike. Today, we're counting down 10 single-player games that almost won Game of the Year. When I heard Ghost of Tsushima was finally getting a PC port in May 2024, I was over the moon. This is a game that, ever since it dropped as a PlayStation 4 exclusive in mid-2020, stuck with a lot of people, including me. It had that perfect blend, a breathtaking open world, emotional storytelling, and incredibly satisfying sword combat. You are living the story of Jin Sakai, a samurai defending Tsushima Island from the Mongol invasion. But it's more than just a story. It's a full-blown love letter to samurai cinema, full of sweeping landscapes and battles that feel like they were lifted straight from a Kurosawa film. When it launched, Ghost of Tsushima made waves, selling over 2.4 million copies in just 3 days. It even won the Player's Voice Award at the Game Awards, proving how deeply it resonated with fans. But when it came time for Game of the Year, it was The Last of Us Part 2 that took the crown. Naughty Dog's sequel was a technical powerhouse. It pushed the PS4 to its absolute limits with jaw-dropping visuals and a cinematic presentation that sparked endless discussion. Whether people loved it or hated it, it was the moment that year. But for me, Ghost of Tsushima was something else entirely. What really stuck with me wasn't just the gameplay or visuals, it was the mood. Standing on a cliffside with the wind whipping through the grass, deciding whether to charge in like a warrior or sneak through the shadows like a ghost, it gave you agency without overwhelming you. And the story, while not breaking new ground, had genuine heart. It dug into themes of honor, legacy, and change in a way that felt grounded and deeply human. It gave us a beautiful, unforgettable samurai journey, and that kind of connection with players, that's the kind of legacy that lasts longer than any award ever could. We have talked about legacy, but Uncharted 4 has a legacy that not many games can claim. When it launched in 2016, everyone knew it was going to be something special. It was the grand finale to Nathan Drake's journey, and for fans like me, that was a bittersweet moment. This wasn't just another action-adventure game. It was a masterclass in cinematic storytelling, emotional character arcs, and jaw-dropping visuals. It was the perfect send-off for one of PlayStation's most beloved icons. But when the Game Awards rolled around that year, Uncharted 4 didn't take home Game of the Year. That honor went to Overwatch. Overwatch was a phenomenon. It wasn't just a game, it was a moment. Blizzard introduced an entirely new IP that immediately felt iconic. It was vibrant, fast-paced, and endlessly replayable, with a focus on teamwork and a cast of heroes that people latched onto instantly. It didn't just dominate the multiplayer scene, it reshaped it. Suddenly, everyone was talking about hero shooters, team comps, and Overwatch memes. It was a cultural wave. Meanwhile, Uncharted 4 was a more personal, linear experience. In a year filled with high-energy multiplayer titles like Overwatch and Doom, a story-driven adventure, even one as polished as this, just didn't hit the same universal note with voters. But for people who followed Nate's story from the beginning, Uncharted 4 wasn't just a game. It felt like saying goodbye to an old friend. I didn't just enjoy playing it, I lived in it. Every moment with Nate, Elena, Sully, and Sam felt earned and meaningful. And somehow, one of the most memorable scenes of the year was just two characters sitting on a couch playing Crash Bandicoot. That's the kind of emotional pull this game had. I'm gonna keep it real simple. I still don't know what happened in 2017. How was Hollow Knight not even nominated for Best Independent Game, let alone Game of the Year? But looking back, this wasn't a game that exploded overnight. It was a slow burn, a small indie release from Team Cherry that launched quietly in February 2017, with no big marketing push, no celebrity voice actors, no over-the-top trailers, just a beautiful, haunting little 2D Metroidvania about bugs, atmosphere, and pure exploration. But in 2017, the year Breath of the Wild dropped, Super Mario Odyssey, Persona 5, Horizon Zero Dawn, the industry was in full blockbuster mode, and Hollow Knight, despite being a masterpiece in its own right, just got buried under the weight of all those massive releases. Not to mention, its console debut on the Switch didn't even happen until mid-2018, which is when a lot of players, myself included, finally discovered it. If it had released on all platforms at once, or if indies had the spotlight they do now, things might have turned out differently. But in 2017, the Game Awards just weren't ready to recognize something this quiet, this unassuming, this brilliant. This game didn't try to hold your hand, not even for a second. Bloodborne throws you straight into the gothic nightmare of Yharnam, where everything is bleak, twisted, and out to kill you. It's a city consumed by beasts, riddled with cosmic horror and soaked in cryptic lore. From the jump, you're lost, confused, underpowered, and somehow totally hooked. This wasn't just another Souls-like, it was the evolution of From Software's formula. Faster, bloodier, meaner, and for a lot of people, it was love at first death. Launching in March 2015 as a PlayStation 4 exclusive, Bloodborne immediately found a dedicated fanbase. It sold over 1 million copies in just a few months, and even years later, people, myself included, are still waiting for a proper remaster or a PC port. The fact that the original version, locked at 30 FPS on PS4, is still considered one of the best action RPGs of all time, that tells you everything. And yet, Bloodborne didn't win Game of the Year at the Game Awards in 2015. That honor went to The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, and to be honest, fairly enough. The Witcher 3 was an absolute juggernaut. It had everything: a massive, beautifully written world, incredible characters, branching quests with real consequences, and hundreds of hours of content that actually mattered. It raised the bar for open-world storytelling and became the gold standard for RPGs overnight. In 2015, Bloodborne was the connoisseur's choice, a masterclass in atmosphere, tension, and combat. But up against the sprawling brilliance and accessibility of The Witcher 3, it was just a little too specialized to take home the biggest trophy. Still, for those who get it, Bloodborne isn't just Game of the Year material, it's a generational classic. 2016 was a wild year for games. Overwatch burst onto the scene as Blizzard's first original IP in ages and took the industry by storm. But tucked into that same year, after nearly a decade in development hell, came Final Fantasy XV. For many, felt like a small miracle just for existing. Once known as Final Fantasy Versus 13, it finally launched on PS4 and Xbox One, and while it wasn't perfect, it was ambitious, heartfelt, and unlike anything the series had done before. Commercially, it did great, but critically, mostly positive. People had been waiting forever for this, and what they got was a bold reimagining of what a Final Fantasy game could be. A road trip RPG starring a royal entourage of 4 best friends who looked like they belonged in a J-pop band. It had huge open-world sections, fast and flashy real-time combat, and some surprisingly emotional story beats. It wasn't the most polished game, pacing issues, weird story gaps, and a bit of tonal whiplash here and there. But it had soul. You could feel that the team poured their hearts into it. Looking at the 2016 Game of the Year nominees, though, you start to see why Final Fantasy XV didn't stand a chance. Overwatch was a full-blown phenomenon, colorful, instantly iconic, and it basically revived the hero shooter genre. Uncharted 4 was a technical and emotional masterpiece. Inside gave us one of the most haunting, minimalist experiences in gaming. Doom reinvented itself and brought back old-school FPS chaos with modern polish. And then there was Titanfall 2, quietly dropping one of the best first-person shooter campaigns ever made. That's stiff competition. But here's the thing about Final Fantasy XV, it hit differently. It wasn't just about gameplay mechanics or cinematic polish. It was about vibe. The late-night campfires, the awkward bro banter, the gorgeous landscapes, the quiet moments on the road, all of it built something unique. And that ending, it stayed with me. Some games aim for realism, others go all in on style. Persona 5, released in 2017, didn't just lean into style, it drenched itself in it. From the second you boot it up, you're hit with that acid jazz soundtrack, those comic book-inspired menus, and the bold red and black aesthetic that makes everything pop. And somehow, this turn-based JRPG made being turn-based feel cool again. It was nominated for Game of the Year at the Game Awards, and for good reason. Among heavy hitters like Breath of the Wild, Super Mario Odyssey, Horizon Zero Dawn, and PUBG, it stood tall as a JRPG that didn't just appeal to genre fans, it pulled in new players too. And if we're being honest, it stacked up surprisingly well. More unique systems and visual flair than Odyssey, and arguably more emotional weight than Horizon. But then there was Breath of the Wild. That game didn't just win Game of the Year, it shifted the conversation. It was quiet, meditative, vast, and endlessly open-ended. It redefined how people saw open-world games. In contrast, Persona 5 was the opposite. Tight, narrative-heavy, and sharply directed. It didn't need to reinvent the genre, it just perfected what it was already doing. Still, Persona 5 has something no one else did. It made mundane life feel magical. Grabbing coffee, hanging out with friends, choosing who to spend your precious free time with. I cared about going to class. That blend of high-stakes supernatural drama and grounded teenage life. No other game does it quite like Persona 5. It might not have taken home Game of the Year, but for a lot of people, it was the game that defined that year, and maybe even their love for the genre. When I found out Red Dead Redemption 2 didn't win Game of the Year at the Game Awards, I was truly shocked. This wasn't just a sequel. It felt like Rockstar had crafted a full-blown cinematic statement. Released in 2018, Red Dead Redemption 2 wasn't built to be rushed. It wanted you to live in its world. It was a slow burn, but the kind that stays with you long after the credits roll. Arthur Morgan's story is where it all lands. His arc, torn between loyalty, survival, and redemption, is the kind of character journey that hits harder than you expect, deeper than Spider-Man's upbeat heroics, more grounded than Odyssey's mythological romp. Even God of War, which was a phenomenal father-son tale, felt a bit more contained. Celeste told a beautiful, deeply personal story, but it didn't have the scale. And Monster Hunter World, great mechanics, but not the same kind of emotional pull. What really set Red Dead Redemption 2 apart was how alive everything felt. NPCs had daily routines. Animals reacted realistically to weather and time. The world wasn't just a backdrop. It was a character in its own right. It wasn't always perfect. The controls could be clunky, the pacing could be glacial, but it all felt intentional. Like Rockstar wanted you to slow down and soak it in. For me, this game hit like a classic novel. I'll never forget Arthur's quiet reflections, that haunting final ride through the mountains, or how it made me sit there thinking about life, death, and the choices we make. In terms of depth, immersion, and storytelling, it stands in a class of its own. This game was a total curveball. No combat, no traditional leveling, just a broken-down detective with amnesia, a city oozing ideology and decay, and so many dialogue options, it felt like the game was psychologically analyzing you. That's Disco Elysium, released in 2019, a gritty, brainy detective RPG that played out like a gut-punch novel. You're not just solving a murder in the city of Revachol, you're unraveling your own mind, holding hands with your inner thoughts, literally, and questioning everything from politics to personal identity. It was a critical darling and deservedly so. It won Best Narrative, Best RPG, Best Independent Game, and even Fresh Indie Game at the Game Awards. But when it came to the big one, Game of the Year, it lost out to Sekiro Shadows Die Twice. Sekiro was a high-octane, expertly crafted action game that challenged players and wowed critics. It was polished, hard-hitting, and an evolution of the Soulsborne formula. Resident Evil 2 nailed the remake formula. Control brought trippy powers and brutalist architecture. Death Stranding was Kojima being Kojima, and Smash Ultimate was the ultimate fan service explosion. But Disco Elysium? It was unapologetically dense, weird, and brilliant. It made me laugh out loud. It made me squirm. It made me stop and genuinely think about politics, morality, and who I was trying to be in that world. It doesn't test your reflexes. It tests your mind. And in a medium often obsessed with action, that felt revolutionary. Disco Elysium became something arguably rarer, a cult classic that changed the game without firing a single shot. It wasn't for everyone, and it didn't need to be. It found the people it was meant for, and those people still haven't shut up about it. This was another game from 2016, but calling it just another game doesn't do it justice. Doom 2016 wasn't just a reboot, it was a resurrection. It brought back everything that made the original legendary: blistering speed, brutal combat, and that heavy metal attitude that didn't care about your feelings, just your kill count. It re-established a lot of what modern first-person shooters still chase today: fluid movement, weighty weapons, and that perfect mix of chaos and control. You weren't just playing Doom, you were performing violence, like it was a metal concert with you in the spotlight. But 2016 wasn't exactly an easy year to break through. Overwatch came out the same year, with its polished style, diverse characters, and a multiplayer experience that became a cultural phenomenon overnight. It was accessible, team-focused, and wrapped up in that Blizzard charm. Overwatch had the hype, the community, and the timing. Still, Doom surprised me. I went in expecting a decent shooter, and came out grinning like a maniac. The second that shotgun clicked and the Mick Gordon soundtrack kicked in, that was it. I was sold. It didn't ask anything from you except one thing: keep moving and keep killing. Pure, honest game design, turned up to 11. And it proved that sometimes going back to basics with full confidence is exactly what the genre needs. After a decade-long nap, From Software came roaring back to its mech roots with Armored Core V6, Fires of Rubicon, and instead of watering it down or trying to Souls-ify it, they leaned fully into the chaos. This one's personal for me. I only recently got into the Armored Core series, but I'll say it straight, this is the best mech game I've ever played. Well, Titanfall 2 still lives rent-free in my head, but AC6 is right there with it. It's lightning fast, deeply technical, and doesn't care about chasing trends. It cares about one thing, making you feel like a god-tier pilot strapped into 40 tons of boosted death metal. Every part of your mech, legs, arms, boosters, weapons, cores, changes everything. How you move, how you fight, how you survive. It's not just customization for the sake of it. It's meaningful, strategic, satisfying. You're not playing as some deep, emotionally torn protagonist. The silent merc you control doesn't give inspiring speeches. But that's fine, because the real main character is your mech, shaped entirely by your decisions. The game throws brutal bosses at you like it's testing your very will to continue. But if you're into deep systems, this is where the magic happens. I'd fail a fight 10, 12 times, rethink my loadout, swap from tank legs to reverse joint for more agility, and suddenly, I'm dancing around lasers, parrying a giant mech's blade, and ending it in a blast of glory. That moment when it all comes together, unmatched. It's not for everyone, and it's not trying to be. That's probably why it won Best Action Game at the Game Awards 2023. It earned that. It might not have been the most talked about game of the year, but for the people who played it, who got it, it was unforgettable. If you're into deep dives like this, where we highlight 10 single-player games that almost won Game of the Year, but still delivered something unforgettable, then don't forget to like, subscribe, hit that bell icon, and drop a comment with the next game you'd love to see covered. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.